So last time we were able to detect when the player went past the edge of the window and end the game. In this video, we'll improve the aesthetics, draw food, and make a few structs to better organize the code. So first let's take a look at this. I mean, the white's okay, but people like dark colors now. Let's fix that. And we'll pick something interesting like maybe like this color. Copy this. Also we'll search for white pixel. There it is. And we'll put in the color that we had from Google's color picker. Oh, look at that. That's a lot more aesthetically pleasing. Let's make the window bigger. Remember, it's 100 by 100. This is the width and the height. So we'll change it to 800 by 600. Well, we should probably make a variable for that. Let's just make a variable for the width and the height. Game display. We'll make a default size. I have a feeling we're going to need this later for some reason. Yeah, I make constants all caps. Oh, much better. One other thing I noticed was it's moving slow. When I hold down the arrow key, he moves really, really slow. Let's speed him up. If you remember, when we push key up, we subtract 2. Well, let's subtract like 10. In text, we'll change all these to 10. Oh yeah, that's a lot better. All right, let's organize our player code now. Yeah, so this is our player here. Remember, when there's an expose event, all we do is we draw a rectangle. Well, that's kind of generic. What we really want to do is like draw everything. So why don't we just make a function called draw, and let's just add it to the game class. And what it should draw is probably like the player. So we need a draw player function. And right now, drawing the player means this line here. So we'll do DD to cut the line. D is for delete. And we'll paste the line with capital P. Fix the spacing. Okay, and then we need to add these functions to the game class definition. So we'll search for class game. Not that one, that one. That's the one we want. So we added a draw player, and we added a draw function. Yeah, good. Now what I really want to do is put all this player information, instead of just having it as numbers in this game. What I really want to do is have like a player object of some kind that's separate from the game class. So what we'll do is, let's go up to where game is. Not that one, that one. And we'll add a player object. For now, it can just be a struct player. Yeah, you probably want to know what the difference is between a struct and a class. The main difference is by default, everything in a struct is public, which means it's accessible from the outside, whereas in a class, by default, everything is private. But since we explicitly label things as public and private, does it really matter? So if I put nothing here, if I put no public or private specifier, then player, everything inside of player will be public, which means it'll be accessible to things outside of player. So a player needs a position. So let's give it a point position. Yeah, maybe point doesn't exist yet. We'll add that. But right now its position is 10, 10. That'll be the default. And a player probably has a color of some kind. And I don't know, that was some number, 609, I don't know, something, something, something. And what's color? Well, let's just look up what it was using before. So X set foreground. The color is an unsigned long. So foreground here specifies the foreground you want to set for the specified graphics context. So that's our color. So it's an unsigned long. So we'll make color an unsigned long. So this is unsigned long color, and it equals something. The player has a position, and the player probably needs to have a size. So let's give it some kind of a size. And we'll make this the width and the height. Okay, now point and size, I don't believe we added those yet. Yeah, so that's it. So let's add point and size. We're going to add them at the top next to rect, because that seems like the right thing to do. And so we have a struct point, and we have a struct size. So what's a point? Well, an x, y pair. And what's a size? A size is a width and a height. Yeah, a rect looks kind of like a point and a size. We'll leave it for now though. Let's go back to player. Okay, what this means with the curly braces, there's lots of ways you can do this. So you could say equals the curly braces, or you could just leave it like this. What that says is set the first variable to 10 and set the second variable to 10. And what are the first and the second variables? Well, the first variable is the first one that we define in the struct. In this case, it's x, and the second one is y. If we had instead done y and then x, well, then it would say the first variable you give it is for the y, and the second is for the x. So let's change it back to the way that makes more sense. So we define them as x first and then y, so that means this is the x position and this one is the y position. The size, we defined the width first and then the height, so the first 10 is for the width, the second 10 is for the height. So that's our player's position and size and color. Let's fix the color. I remember there was a draw rect. 6091AB, so let's go back up to player. Now it's a struct player. We'll set that to 6091AB. Now let's go back to where we're drawing the player, and we'll change it. Oh, we need a player. We can't just do player. We've got to create a player in the game class. So let's go to the class game. We need to add a player object. So we'll call it, maybe we could call it player. I'm just going out on a limb here. And we're going to have to get rid of this XY here. These XYs were the player's position in the past, but we're going to put that inside of this player object now instead. So wherever it says X and Y, we're going to have to replace that with player. Let's get rid of these two lines. Let's go back to draw player. There it is. This one is the color. So that's player color. That's it. And this is player dot position dot x, no underscore on the x, player dot position dot y, no underscore on that, and then this is player dot size dot width and player dot size dot height. And this line is kind of long, so let's break it up and make it look a little better. The nice thing about doing this is you can see your mistakes easier. Like right here, I forgot to put an underscore, and right here I did too. So that's one of the values in aligning your code. Okay, so if you remember, going back to handle event, we've got expose, then we draw, then draw calls draw player only right now, and then draw player calls our draw rect for our player's current color, position, and size. That should work. Oh, or not. Oh yeah, we deleted X, Y, and we didn't get rid of them. So here it says line 221, we have Y was not declared in the scope because remember we deleted Y underscore from the game class. So we need to replace that with players Y. So let's look for Y underscore. Not that one. Oh boy. What line was it? 221. So you can go to the line number with escape colon and then the line number 221. It goes to line 221. There we have the y. So let's replace this with player position dot y, and then the same thing on these lines. All right, let's see if there's any other x's around. Oh, there's another one. Is this for the player? Yes, this is the player's x. Okay, that line's kind of long too, so we'll go ahead and wrap it. That looks nice. Okay, now you might think that this width here is for the player's width or the player's height, but it's not. Remember, this is the isPlayerWithinBounds function. So we're checking to see if the player's position is within the window's bounds. So this width here is for the window. That's why it's rect W, and we're getting it from GameDisplayGetGeometry. So this is the width and the height of the window. So those should remain as w.width and w.height, not player.width or player.size.width or player.size.height. All right, built. Okay, we've got our player back and it still moves. Fantastic. Let's add some food. Food. So what we want is to just like create some food and then draw it. So let's go to class game. And let's add some functions in here. We're going to create food, and then we're going to like draw it, draw food, draw all food, right? Draw all the food, because there's going to be more than one of them. And we draw all the food, well, we're going to want to draw like each one of them. So we'll have a draw single food, and we're going to need to tell it which food to draw. So we'll give it a const food reference f. That basically means the const means I'm not going to change it inside the draw single food function. I'm just going to use its information. So like I'm going to use its color, but I'm not going to change its color. I'm going to use its position and its width and height, but I'm not going to change it. But we don't know what a food is yet because we haven't defined that. So let's add that to struct food, whatever that contains. And let's go write these three functions. We've got create food, draw single food, and draw all food. Let's just copy them. Yank 2 down. Let's go to where we have game draw. Not that one, this one. Let's go ahead and add those here. Oops. Shift P will paste. Here's our three lines. Now just some editing. All right, when we draw a single food, okay, let's define what a food is. Struct food, okay. So what is a food? Well, let's make a food like a rectangle. So we need a color. I don't know. Let's make it black for now. And then we'll give it a position, just like a player has a position. Let's give it a default position of, I don't know, 100, 100. Could be anything. Let's give it a size as well. It'll be the same size as, let's just make it the same size as a player for now because that's easy. I think that's it for now. Yeah, so what we're going to want to do is we're going to need more than one food item. So let's create a collection of food items, or in C++, the typical container is a vector. So we'll create a standard library vector, and then we'll create it of type food, and we'll call it food. Yeah, it's that easy. Then we need to add the vector header file. So let's go up to the top and add vector. Back to where we were. So we've got some food. So we need to fill that up with some food values and then draw them. So probably the first thing we want to do is create some food. So the main thing about the food is we'll just make them all the same size and the same color, but what we're going to change about them is their position. So first thing we want to do is take our food vector and we want to get rid of anything that might have been in there already if we're going to create new food. So let's clear it out, just delete it all from food. And the next thing we're going to do is say resize it to have 10 food items, and then we're going to want to fill them up. So let's loop through all of them. So for each F food item in the food list, we're going to set its position. For now, we'll just say it's at 0. But we'd really like it to be something, you know, kind of random. So maybe we could just, if it were some way, we could just say like random number, like that would be nice. And in fact there is. If you just want to look up C++ rand and probably find the rand function, there's the one we want, std_rand. Okay, and it's in the C standard library header. So std_rand, and add the C standard library header. Let's go back to std_rand. Okay, so that gives me a random number. And what's the range that it gives me? Well, between 0 and rand max. Well, rand max is like implementation defined, but it's huge basically. Maximum value returned by std_rand. So that would work, but it would put our food potentially between 0 and a bajillion. So in order to keep it kind of like on the screen, we need to limit random to be between 0 and the width of the screen, and the y value to be between 0 and the height of the screen. So let's go ahead and say we had the max x that we want to have food be up to. So 0 to max x. Let's say the x for right now is 800. We have that size, the default width and height up above 600. And then what we'd like is to divide it by 800 or something. So what we're going to do is the modulus operator divided by max x. The modulus is like a remainder. So if it was 800, if the random number was 810, right? And we divided it by 800, well, that would give us some fractional number. But if we use the modulus operator, we divide that by 800, that gives us, well, it gives us 10. So it just gives us the remainder. If we had 1610, then it would divide it by 800 2 times completely, and then we'd be left over with 10 also. So that's the way you do this. So modulus max x for the x and max y for the y. At that point, we should have 10 food items that are randomly positioned all over the screen. Now we need to draw them. So let's draw a single food first. How do we draw a single food? Well, it's just a rectangle, so we just need to call game display draw rectangle. I don't remember how that goes, so let's look how I did it before. Yeah, like this one here. So we'll just copy that and paste it down here. Remember to copy its y for yank, the number of lines -1, and then the down arrow for the things below it. So we'll paste that here. I just deleted that and got rid of my buffer. Yank 5 down. You can see it says 6 lines yanked. We'll come up here and paste it, capital P. Delete the excess. Okay. And it's not player color, it'll be f.color. And f.position and f.size. So that should draw a single food. And then we can draw you draw all the food. You just loop through all the foods and draw them. Draw single food, F. right? I mean, is that it? Oh, we probably need to call draw all food, huh? We haven't called that yet. So we need to go to our draw function, this one. And after we draw the player, let's draw the food. Draw the food, draw all the food. Yeah, I'm not sure we called create food anywhere. Create food, create food, create food. Yeah, we never call it. So the best place to call it, I think, is in the constructor of games. So when we create a game, it calls create food. All right, let's run that. Oh no, errors. In the member function, my game create food, there's an error. Max x does not name a type. Oh yeah, I typed const max x, const int max x. So let's go to line 226. That's what this is in the main CPP, line 226. So to go to line number, escape colon 226. There's my line. Int. Much better. There's our food. Those little black squares are the food. That totally worked. And you can see it's drawing the player first and then drawing the food second, which is why the food gets drawn on top of the player. See, in our draw function, we draw the player first and then we draw the food. If we switch those so that we draw food first and then the player, see what that does. Let's go on top of the food. Yeah, so now the player is on top of the food. That's probably better. All right, so look at where the food's positioned. We want it random. Look at where it's positioned now. It's like it's in the same place each time. It never changes. Like, what kind of random number is this? Not very random. I mean, it's kind of random, but like it's the same random sequence each time. So the issue with this is that the random number is not really truly random. What it is a sequence of numbers that start with a first number. Well, we need to set what that first number is, and that determines what the whole sequence will be. So if it starts at 0, if the first number is always 0, then it's going to give you the same sequence, the 0 sequence, every time. So what we need to do is give it a different starting number each time. The question is, well, how do you do that? And the typical way to do that is to do like they have here on the first line of the program. Use the current time as a seed for the random number generator. So what this says is srand, if you open that, seeds the pseudo-random number generator used by studrand with the value seed. So we could just give it a number, or by using the example that they have here, by giving it the time when you run the program, it'll be different each time you run the program. The time will be different. So what we need to do is seed our random number. And we only need to seed it once at the beginning of the program, so let's just do that in the game constructor. /game, not :game. So again, it's stud srand, and then we need to give it a time. The time is stud time of a null pointer, null pointer, null putter, whatever you want to say. Stud time of null putter. Okay. And then we need to add our include files. So stud rand and srand are in C standard library. So we'll add that. Go to line 1. Oh, it's already there, C standard library. And time is in the C time header. So we'll add that. Okay. Now that looks different from what I remember. And that's different from the time before. And that's different. So it looks like we're getting random food positions now. So that's great. And our player is drawn above the food. No, wait, one more thing. The food is ugly. Black food is no fun. Let's make it something more interesting, like maybe like some bright yellowish color, something like that. All right, so copy this color, or choose your own. The default color for food is black. Well, we're going to change that. Default color is now, hashtag is not the right thing. We need 0x. All right, let's try that. Oh, that's much better. Yeah, that looks good. Okay.